There are very few consoles that can match the JRPG library of the PS1. It was a monument of newfound scale, of spectacle and pizzazz, of more titles than you can shake a disproportionately large stick at, even if you lived outside of Japan. Several of them have been etched in history as classics and established the familiar pillars of the genre that stand to this day. Final Fantasy 7 through 9, Chrono Cross, Legend of Dragoon, names that will be familiar even to those who don't engage with lengthy turn-based experiences. Thanks to a foundation formed by the 16-bit generation showing there was a solid audience for the genre, developers were more than ready to tackle the larger ambitions allowed by the 5th generation and its expanded CD capacity. Once creators had the chance to craft more expansive world with dozens upon dozens of hours of stories to tell, there was no going back. That isn't to say previous generations didn't have entries worth your time, but the PlayStation allowed developers to explore ideas on such a larger scale in comparison, it's easy to see why so many jumped to the little gray slab to act as the portal to their new worlds. Dig a few layers down and you'll find a plethora of titles most never discuss. Between the pool of obscurity and the pinnacle of reverence, there exists a line of games that just barely missed out on the highest level of success, but are still remembered fondly by fans of the genre. Wild Arms, Thousand Arms, Vandal Hearts, Jade, Coccoon, all titles that showed new potential for a genre just starting to really expand its wings. Among the sea of titles was a project that took things in a different direction. A game that took the new features of technology and used them to polish familiar elements to shine brighter than ever. A game that, at its core, wants nothing more than to take the audience on an adventure they'd remember. A game called Grandia. Developed by Game Arts off the back of their similarly well-regarded Lunar PS1 ports, but several years before the legendary TMNT smash-up, Grandia is one of those titles hallowed by the JRPG community as a pinnacle of 5th generation quality, a journey fondly remembered by those who played it, and one whose joyful core shines even brighter today than it did in the 90s. An experience many consider on par, if not better, than Square's offerings. Probably. I'm sure there are at least a few people who think this is better than Final Fantasy IX. Personally, I've never beaten it. It's one of those titles that's been on my bucket list for far too long, in the same way as Artanelico and the original Dot Hack games. It's really hard to justify going back to visit well-regarded classics in a genre like JRPGs when I know for a fact it's going to take dozens of hours on top of the dozens of hours I already spend playing games for review on this channel. But since we managed to reach 1,000 submarines this year, I figured it might be fun to step out of the usual pool of obscurity from which I normally pull my games and talk about something people actually know. And boy, do people know Grandia. This title might not be talked about on the same level as the highest of high-tier series, but whenever I hear talk of Grandia, it's always positive. Well, at least when it comes to the first 2 games. In fact, you know what? I don't think it would be crazy for me to call Grandia the Banjo-Kazooie of JRPGs. Think about it. Late 90s series, heavily associated with a specific console's flagship genre despite being made by a third party, a legendary first entry by a proven developer, a bigger and more ambitious sequel, followed by a couple lackluster spin-offs and a third game everyone hates, going to today where it's basically nowhere in sight aside from ports to newer systems and the nostalgia of a whole generation of genre fans. So what makes it so fondly remembered, and is it even worth playing today? Well, I can only offer my opinion and my experience, so please join me on this long trek across the lands in the name of adventure. We start off like nearly every JRPG in the history of time, an FMV sequence cobbled together from animations we'll be seeing later in the game, and get a look at the obvious villain of the plot, with voice acting no less. Fancy.
I guess I must have dozed off.
This is General Ball, speaking with his subordinates Lean and Mullen, the latter of which being his son. Once they speak of their excavation of the Salt ruins, Lean opens the shutters to reveal the bright world below their airship. A sweeping camera shot that looks a little jittery from here. Oh, there we go. Guides us to the coastal town of Parm, home to Justin and his best friend Sue. They're currently in the middle of an epic battle to gather 4 sacred treasures, which includes a regular apron and a pot lid. Immediately, this opening is extremely endearing and lets us know about our characters. Justin's a romanticist with lifelong dreams of being an adventurer like his father, and his determination to stick to grand theming even with such a simple game against the town bully Gantz shows his enthusiastic personality. Whom amongst us hasn't pretended to swing a random stick we found on the ground as if it was a magical sword of legend, or saw an open field as a battleground, or utilized the infamous everything-proof shield? I hope you didn't do that last one, because that's what we in the industry call a prick move. Joining and encouraging him is Sue, a chipper childhood friend who clearly has a complex about being seen as a child. Together, they scour their town and win the challenge. Their attitude combined with the cheery music makes them immediately endearing and relatable to anyone who doesn't try acting like a total stick in the mud for fear of being seen as cringe-worthy. The word is cringeworthy, worth cringing about. It's also a good chance for the player to wander around the deliberately limited section of the town, talking to NPCs and... Is that a strip club? After a hearty day of adventure, the pair go back to Justin's home where he gets chewed out by his mom, and the 3 of them have dinner. This gives us the first of several adorable instances where characters get to chat in whatever order you'd like. Sometimes they contain information to move the story forward, but for the most part, they function as cute little breaks between sections where the characters can reflect upon what's happening. In this case, the 3 discuss Justin's father, his reputation as an adventurer, and how he and Justin's mom fell in love. The next day, Justin goes to the museum to ask the curator about a treasure his father left behind for him, the fabled Spirit Stone. Unfortunately, he has no conclusion for us, but does give Justin a letter allowing him to explore the nearby ruins. It's a good thing he gives it to us before we accidentally break his statue of a fabled Icarian, because otherwise this plot wouldn't get started. Traveling to the Salt Ruins, it seems to be overtaken by the Garlisle Forces, a militaristic organization whose actual function in this world I'm still not clear on, and it's pretty clear they don't want the public entering. So naturally, Justin sees it as a sign to explore and stumbles across an ancient statue that responds to his spirit stone. It opens to reveal the inside is actually organs and bones. Wait, why is that? Inside the sanctum, the pair find a mysterious light and are shown something beyond their wildest dreams. This is Liete, an envoy of the ancient lost kingdom of Angelo, the powerful civilization that once ruled over the world in peace and prosperity. Since much of the information about Angelo and the Icarians are a bit blurred between myth and reality after thousands of years, Justin is more than happy to be given his task to travel east and see what the truth of the world really is. He's told of Alent, a city that holds all the answers to his and the world's questions on the reality and collapse of Angelo. So he escapes capture from the bad guys, goes back home, learns he needs a boat pass to get to the other continent, earns said pass and more encouragement from a possibly crazy old man, and tells Sue he's going alone, much to her dismay.
Justin! You traitor!
And then sneaks out the following morning to board the ship. Just before he boards, he finds a letter in his pocket written by his mother to be given to the Adventurers Guild, reading it without a second thought. It tells about how she knew he'd do that and her fears of Justin heading off like his father. Even if she's apprehensive, she understands why her son feels the need to strike out into the world and how she'll be waiting for his return. Man, this is gonna destroy me, isn't it? And it was at this moment, setting sail on the open sea, my adventure truly beginning, when I realized I'd been playing for over 2 hours. Yep, the inciting incident to this game took me over 2 hours to finish. Maybe it'd be shorter if you know the fastest route possible, and that might not seem like a big deal when you map out all that's happened, but man, this game's plot is kind of a slow burn. Like this. Really though, it isn't a big deal at all. When the story beats happen, it feels like a decent step forward is taken towards the end. It just often feels like it takes a while to take those steps. The general through line of Grandia's plot is remarkably simple when you get right down to it. Justin stumbles upon someone asking him to travel to a faraway land for reasons yet unknown. He goes there while exploring some ruins linked to Angelo and combating the Garlisle forces, and you discover the evil big bad to fight at the end of the story. Honestly, I'm having a hard time making a summary of the plot because what I just described doesn't take up much of your time. Grandia has this structure that leaves the main plot feeling more like a loose through line of what I can only describe as a series of road trip shenanigans. The journey of finding Alent and stopping the bad guys is important, but it almost feels like it takes a backseat to the wacky subplots you encounter along the way, and the boat is a perfect example of this structure. When you get on the boat, Sue pops out of a barrel because she just really wanted to join you, and they learn the guild's best adventurer is about to board. We get to meet them the next day and see...
I can't believe it. It's a lady.
This is Fina, famed explorer and soon party member. She and Justin hit it off, and it's clear he's very impressed by her reputation. Soon, a fabled ghost ship appears, and the crew doesn't want to go in to clear it out, so we join Fina and battle a giant squid monster. And then it just goes away. Like, we're on our way to the new world and everything just had to stop so we could go on the ghost ship. The whole game's plot plays out like this, so while giving a plot synopsis would be easy, it also feels like it would be a lot of hot air because not much actually happens with the main plot until the last, fourth of the game. And honestly, it's kinda great. Keep in mind, when I praise the story of Grandia in this way, it's to say the events themselves are really enjoyable. It really is just a fun ride through a string of misadventures, regardless of their relevance to the actual plot. When you land on the new continent, you go to the guild and find out the boss is this snotty brat man-child who turned it into a tour guide service. Not only that, but he specifically forbids adventurers from adventuring. Seriously. Then, because he's a snotty brat man-child, he straight up kidnaps Fina and forces her into a wedding, prompting Justin to save her and get the heck out of Dodge. Yeah, it's a funny sequence, but the only thing that really matters here in terms of finding a lint is this slimeball's out of the way and Fina joins the party permanently. It actually works very well, since getting into these smaller adventures gives the experience a very breezy feel, hopping from set piece to set piece without wearing you down with exposition or lengthy sections where no plot happens at all. They keep the story very entertaining, even if what's going on doesn't really matter all that much in the grand scheme of things. Crashing the wedding doesn't get you closer to a lint, but it's at least interesting. This isn't like Chrono Trigger where everything you do has a logical connection to stopping Lavos. You're on a magical road trip with plenty of fun steps along the way as you figure out where to visit next. But wherever it is, one thing is for certain, you're going to have a lot of fights along the way. Now, I'm saying this with no hyperbole. What I'm about to say is totally, 100%, honestly what I think at this point in time. Grandia 1 has one of the best turn-based combat systems I've ever played. I guess that was a pretty lame reveal, huh? I'm sorry for hyping it up like that. People who played this game already know the combat is rock solid, but I can imagine such praise sounds odd if you aren't a fan of the genre. Like, if you don't play old JRPGs very often because you're too busy having an actual life, I'm sure your eyes might glaze over just showing you some battle screens. While you're watching a video on Grandia, if that's the case, I'm not quite sure, but hey, thanks for watching. To be fair, a lot of RPGs have similar combat, and that's just due to factors like tradition, expectations, and not being the main focus most of the time. As a result, games in the genre can feel stale with their battle system, so Grandia took a look at that and thought, okay, let's take this and make it a bit fancier. Now, on the surface, the combat looks pretty plain. Little menus popping up for a character's turn, options including things like regular attacks, magic, and items, something to show the turn order, but wait, what's this? The characters are... no way. They're moving! Yep, that's something you don't see every JRPG. Okay, I'll see myself out. So Game Arts decided to be a little cheeky and inject some kinetic aesthetic into the combat, one of those being your characters having to move around the arena. Different weapons give different ranges, so a fighter needs to get into position if they want to deliver a hit. If a character uses a ranged weapon like a bow, or they're casting magic, this changes the timing of when your hits make contact, which can affect aspects of the battle like the timing of enemy turns, or how party members follow up with their own attacks for combos. Yeah, combos, this game's pretty cool like that. And how do you know when a fighter is about to make a move? Why, with this little meter down here. If you saw my video on Atelier Iris 2, which, you can watch right now if you haven't, go ahead, this video will probably still be here. This bar should look a bit familiar. Instead of determining a rigid turn order, Grandia uses this sliding scale to show the action speed of everyone in combat. It's mostly taken up by this section called Wait, where you're on standby until they hit the command line. Once you pick an action for the turn, the respective character's icon will move into the Act section and go off once they reach the end. Depending on the move you select and the character's stats, they might go immediately or take a while to charge. This free-flowing meter and non-immediate command style adds snappy, more active decision-making to combat instead of just having static menus, which I still love. Plus, with the camera zooming in and out to give you a look at everything in battle, fights can be enjoyable simply from the extra bit of spectacle they provide. It's really cool when you get the timing down pat and smack an enemy and cancel their whole turn, like smack, just walk up and wham! no turn for you. And just listen to those impact sounds.
Oh, that's crunchy!
I'm also going to say right now, this game is blissfully easy for the most part. A lot of older games of this genre have a reputation for being absurdly grindy, but Grandia actually lets you avoid enemies entirely if you want most times, and I didn't find myself feeling underleveled at any point. So props to the developers for making a solid difficulty curve. And thank whatever god you believe in, Working Designs didn't localize this like they wanted. Would have been an absolute nightmare. After Fina joins the party, the trio makes their way to the Dom Ruins, a lengthy dungeon that houses another message from Liette telling us to keep heading east. Okay, thanks Liette, you're being a real help here. On their way out, the group comes across a young boy passed out on the ground, so they take him back to Fina's home where they all get imprisoned by the Garlisle forces. Aw yeah, prison break time! With the help of Lean too, how curious. After a bit of vent crawling, the crew rescues the boy and fight their way to freedom, culminating in a battle with the 3 comedic relief lieutenants and a full-on chase sequence with they hijack a train. I'll say it again, a lot of the plot does feel fluffy, but they sure know how to show off fun moments like this. They even chase you down in fighter planes, it's amazing. After breaking away from their pursuers, the crew finds themselves at the young boy's hidden village, where they spend the night and figure out where to go next. Suddenly, the Garlisle forces invade, and Justin and company take it upon themselves to fight back, but failing to prevent Lean from making off with a large fragment of the Spirit Stone. With the bad guys getting one step closer to whatever they're planning, we make our way to the end of the world, which sadly isn't a pub with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, but instead, a giant wall. Like, it's just a straight up massive wall in the way. This is a location that's said to have brought an end to the age of adventuring, and it's just a big piss off wall. You're telling me nobody tried scaling it? They just gave up and decided that's where the world ended? It isn't even that hard to climb. It shifts around to make a path for you, and there's only a minor chance of getting crushed to death. This trek supposedly takes a few days, but once they reach the top, our heroes look over the shining horizons of these new unexplored lands. And then they're literally dropped into them by means of flying drones. Sadly, we get separated from Sue and have to go looking for— oh crap, she got cooked into a stew! Oh no, there she is. Now we get to meet Gadwin, a super huge knight with power to spare and shoulders that won't quit. He'll be joining the crew for a while, and this is another thing I like about Grandia. Throughout the game, you have different people join your party. However, unlike other RPGs of the time where you can customize your active party from a roster, Grandia just gives and takes characters as the need arises, never giving you more than 4 at a time. Gadwin is here for a good time, not a long time, and he'll soon be swapped out to make room for someone else. The game never gives you more than you need, and it's another good point of streamlining. It isn't the only old JRPG that does this. I'll take any chance to bring up Wild Arms, but it's another thing that makes this game so approachable. From this point on in the story, the formula I laid out earlier sticks all the way through. You visit a village, need to travel somewhere like a dungeon, probably fight a boss, find an item, be on your way. I could continue explaining everything that happens in the plot, but really, there wouldn't be much point. There are important points established or expanded upon. I mean, this is where most of the game happens, but explaining all of it feels kinda pointless. Not because what happens is negligible, but more like the events feel like filler. Is that rude to say? Look, a lot happens in Grandia, and most of it has very little, if anything, to do with the whole find Alent and stop the Garlisle forces thing. After Gadwin joins you, the party visits a supposed paradise village, only to find people running away from them. When the village chief sees Fina and Justin as a couple, he throws a massive party and celebration for some reason we don't know. If that sounds like it doesn't make any sense, it does. After he tosses the pair into a volcano with a camouflaged catapult. Apparently, this village thinks the angry dragon residing in the volcano will only abandon the place when given a loving couple as a sacrifice, which is why everyone in the village was so skittish. They didn't want to be chucked to the volcano dragon. Can't imagine why, but then you find the dragon, beat him up, and leave. And it's never brought up again. There is a reason for going to the village. It makes sense why you're there, but the step it takes in the actual story has nothing to do with fighting a giant volcano-dwelling dragon. But the story is still great, and it's because the focus is clearly on the characters. The central plot of Grandia isn't anything special. I might even call it generic, but the cast more than makes up for it. I briefly went over Justin earlier, but he's such a good protagonist for this adventure. His simplistic enthusiasm for helping others and seeing the world, coupled with his general naivete, makes him extremely likable and good for keeping you on track. Fina, despite being the most renowned adventurer in the world, seems very guarded and cautious by contrast. It could have something to do with her relationship to her sister, Lean, a point that provides quite a lot of tension when encountering the Garlisle forces. Gadwin's hilarious, this giant pile of muscle who's just so gung-ho about honor and strength. One of the best moments in the game for me is when the group climbs up a tower for a new sacred treasure and finds the Room of Destiny. Yes, that's seriously what it's called. It contains 2 mirror portals, one of which contains the item we need, the other will trap you in a void dimension forever. Gadwin, being the noble warrior, offers to test one of the mirrors to see which one's correct. As he says his goodbyes in preparation to potentially lose his life, he walks forward and can't fit through the door. He's too big to sacrifice himself. That was fantastic. That was hilarious. What a guy. Later on, you get more party members in the form of Rap, who's okay, he's kind of just this loudmouth dork, but he means well. Milda is a massive Amazonian married to a literal cow. Hilarious. Also, according to the wiki, she's 19. I don't know what to do with that information. She's pretty nice, but I have a feeling I don't want to look up fan art of her. One guy you meet early in the New World is Guido, a traveling merchant whose entire race speaks like stereotypical New Yorkers. Hey, what's the matter, you? Oh, they actually say that. Someone knew what they were doing. Even Mullen and Lean get some depth to their characters, which was a pleasant surprise. I hear some people hate Sue, but I actually liked her arc. From the start, it's clear she has a complex about being younger than Justin and is treated like she isn't capable. After being on the adventure for so long, she gets sick and has to admit she isn't able to keep up with the rest of the team, deciding to travel back home to Parm. It's a scene that actually kinda hurts to see happen. Sue's been along for this whole journey and she just has to leave despite how much she clearly wants to stay. And yet what makes it hurt even more is that she was my main magic user. Okay, so I'm actually a bit iffy on how the magic system works, and it's one of my very few problems with this game. How it works is you can find these mana eggs scattered across the world, and there's a finite number of them as far as I can tell. When you go to a store, you can spend 1 egg to have a character learn an element of magic they don't already know from earth, water, wind, and fire. Wind and fire are basically the same, being AoE attack skills, but I think the trade-off is wind has more range while fire has more damage. Maybe, don't quote me on that. Meanwhile, Earth is a defense buff, and Water does exactly what you think it does. Now, they can use the most basic form of that element and level it up with repeated use. Leveling them up grants access to more powerful versions of a spell, and in the case of Earth, turns it from a support skill to another AoE attack. If a character levels 2 or more elements a certain amount, they can even gain access to new combination spells, like Lightning or Ice. Also, while physical skills take up SP, spells cost MP. Not a 3rd gauge, but spell charges. I really didn't know where else to fit that in. I just think it's weird. Similarly, if a character levels their magic and a certain kind of weapon, they unlock special physical skills that combine the utility of physical attacks with the effective range of magic. Sounds pretty cool, and it is, but I have to say I'm of 2 minds on how this works. See, I get why the leveling system works like this, and I guess it wouldn't make sense for Fina to just start lighting her whip on fire without reason, but it's such a pain to unlock these skills for characters clearly meant to be physical fighters. Like, after Gadwin leaves the party, Justin has the chance to learn a really powerful technique called the Dragon Cut. It's a fantastic skill, hits everyone on screen for solid damage. It's really nice. But to get it, Justin needs to level both his earth and fire magic a pretty decent amount, despite him being so clearly designed as a physical fighter. Yes, he has balanced stats, but he's very clearly geared towards physical damage. I can understand encouraging the player to spread out experience, and there are some enemies that can only be harmed by magic, but that's such a waste of his turn 9 out of 10 times. His magic just doesn't compare to walking up and smacking someone, and keep in mind, earth magic starts as a defense buff in a game that doesn't warrant that kind of skill most of the time. I kind of wish these moves functioned like the double and triple text in Chrono Trigger, where a magic character learns a powerful spell while Justin levels his sword skills or something like that. I don't know, maybe that's just me. It isn't a big deal, I just think it's a bit tedious, and Sue leaving meant I was lacking a good healer for way too long until Fina leveled up her water magic. At least she's with you the whole way through. Because you see, at the core of this story, the beating heart of this adventure, the, meat and potatoes of this hike, no, that's terrible, is a romance. Count me in. Okay, well, in all honesty, it isn't the absolute most important aspect of the plot, but the growing relationship between Justin and Fina and how they both grow as characters because of it is one of the strongest aspects of the experience. Fina is much more cautious than Justin, but he's the one who inspires her to break the rules and strike out to remind her why she's an adventurer in the first place. The opposite is also true, with Justin becoming a bit more level-headed and considerate thanks to Fina's influence. They round each other out very well, and their little flirty scenes scattered throughout the game are adorable. One of my favorite scenes in the whole game is when the pair of them take Gadwin's boat across the sea to reach the eastern continent after using their one teleport to get Sue home. It's just the two of them drifting across the calm oceans and reflecting on all that's happened by this leg of the journey. Justin walks out to the side and talks with Fina, and it's here where she straight up confesses.
You know, I've been thinking about things here in the night breeze. Say, you know what I've been thinking about? Yes, Justin.
I know. Were you thinking about Sue? She's so noisy and annoying, but you sort of miss having her around.
I was thinking of you, Justin.
What? Thinking of me?
Right. Justin, do you think we can be together forever?
Of course we will. We're gonna have adventures together forever.
That makes me so happy. Thank you, Justin. Say, Justin, do you love me?
Of course I love you. Sue loves you, and Gadwin too. We all love you, Fina.
Justin, I'm not talking about that kind of love.
Huh? Fina, what do you mean? Fina.
And then a mermaid washes up on board and has us go to an unrelated mini-dungeon to fight a giant fish. Okay. The relationship isn't the most in-depth I've seen, but it's one of the more believable ones, and it helps you to relate to them so much better. It's fantastic. You know what else is fantastic? The presentation. I'm sorry, I promise I'm trying my best here. Grandia's visuals aren't the most detailed I've seen on PS1, but it's such a cute look. Also, I do have a copy on the PS1 as you saw earlier, but I'm playing this off the HD collection on the Switch. The combination of highly detailed, colorful sprites interacting in a low-poly 3D world is something I wish we'd see more. Honestly, I wish this is the kind of look those HD 2D games would go for. Don't get me wrong, Octopath Traveler looks nice, but there's something about Grandia's style that just feels better. Sprite animations are fantastic, especially when you see them moving around in battle. Also, your chosen weapon type is shown on the sprite. Like, it doesn't do anything, it's purely visual, but it's a really nice detail. Look at some of these bosses, they still look fantastic today. The shading and design variety on them is great, and I really like how some of their attacks are displayed with 3D models. This is a level of effort I can seriously appreciate. Walking around the areas rendered in this blocky, low-poly style is so endearing, even if the environments can get in the way of the camera at times. There are some areas that look a bit bland, and others I think have oddly confusing designs, but it's too cute for me to be mad at. This goes doubly for the vehicles, which are just, I mean, look at them. Look at the train. It looks like a toy. I love it. And then there's the soundtrack. Oh geez, this never ends. All I'll say is, it fits wonderfully, and the main theme being used at vital points always hits. It sounds absolutely majestic. So yeah, visuals, soundtrack, all checks out. Looks great. It even has little details like moving certain items by walking past them and Justin's portrait being upside down when being flung through the air. Let's see, I think I lost my place in the story. Where were we? Oh right, Fina gets kidnapped by the big villain and we fight him on an airship. No, wait, I think I jumped ahead. Okay, so the last roughly third of Grandia really expands and explains just what the heck we're trying to defeat. Meeting Rapp and his village, we hear of another village being petrified thanks to something called the Tower of Doom. We take a trip to the tower to see what's up, meet Milda, and find a Garlisle research base studying something. This is Gaia, a powerful entity connected to the Spirit Stone Ball is trying to resurrect. By this point, we've also explored ruins like the Twin Towers. Oh, and the Garlisle forces are there. I hope they didn't bring their airplanes. In these ruins, we learn more of Angelo and the power of the Icarians. There's even a large statue of a four-limbed Icarian in the ruins, remember this. A bit of exploring later, in another ruin, the crew finds the item they need to reach Alent thanks to the help of Guido, but they're intercepted by the Garlisle forces. Then Fina gets kidnapped to the airship, so it's a good thing Guido stashed his magical flying manta nearby. Always be prepared, I suppose. Fighting to Ball's location, Justin has a one-on-one battle with the leader of the Garlisle forces. When Justin wins in about 2 minutes, he's not very strong, Ball reveals oh jeez! Wow, okay, so Ball fused himself with Gaia to gain more power. After battling him, Justin is flung off the airship and Fina jumps after him, accessing her own Icarian powers to save the two of them. This is hinted at earlier when Lean shows her own powers. They are twins after all. This is even reaffirmed when we learned the four-arm statue earlier wasn't meant to represent one Icarian, but a pair of siblings. Pretty neat little thing there. And then you chuck some metals into a fountain to ride a rainbow to the moon. Okay? This is Alent, the city of knowledge, and a sudden boss rush that includes the volcano dragon. Wait, how? Which means we finally get to meet Liette and all the clones she made due to sheer loneliness. Can't relate, I would never want to hang out with another version of myself. But then we meet the real Liette, and she fills us in on the remaining history of Angelo. The Angelo civilization was a world-spanning society brought to prosperity due to the Icarians, utilizing their connection to the spirits in ways normal humans couldn't. And of course, in the typical fashion of humanity, they got super jealous and ruined paradise. After hundreds of years, a group of humans stole the Spirit Stone and some wings. Icarian wings can be detached, apparently. This was such a stupid move. Nature itself manifested Gaia from the sheer greed of humanity, which went on to destroy the entirety of Angelo. And now, every 1,000 years or so, Gaia is revived by a power-mad human, requiring a pair of Icarian twins to be sacrificed in order to put him to rest for the time being. Liette is the one overseeing all these events on loop, or at least the current incarnation of the Overseer. So if we're going by Endless 8 rules, that means we'll get an alternate universe branch-off about her soon, and get a spin-off I think is even better than the original. That's right, Haruhi Zealots. Come at me. Justin, ever being the optimist, declares he'll find a way to stop Gaia forever in a way that doesn't require Fina to be sacrificed. Square, I have some questions for you. Liette, choosing to believe in Justin's hopeful future, joins us as our final party member, and we ride back to Earth in a magic space rocket. Okay, sure, why not, game? By this point, Ball is confronted by a rebelling Mullen, who's trying to cause an uprising against his increasingly mad father. Oh, and Ball's plan is to kill the world and rebuild it in his own image. Of course. I mean, the guy's wearing an eye patch and has a vaguely mythical sounding name. Did you expect anything else? Of course, it doesn't work, and Ball proceeds to petrify Zilpadan in a similar way as we saw the Cafu village earlier. This is what's going to happen to the entire world if we don't stop him. With the growing threat, Fina makes the difficult decision to part ways with the party and team up with Mullen's Garlisle forces to carry out the usual fate of simply putting Gaia back to sleep. Trying to buy the group some time, Lean takes it upon herself to power the cannon, giving her life in the process. Mullen and Fina agree to a plan where she follows her sister, but Justin can't bear to see the plan go through and objects. Not wanting to risk the chance of permanently defeating Gaia, Mullen leaves Justin, Rapp, and Liette behind as they prepare for the final battle. This whole situation shocks Justin and leaves him with nowhere to go, no drive to see the events through, and no hope of stopping Gaia. What's the world worth if the one he loves isn't there with him? Heading back to Zilpadan, he seeks counsel from Guido and suddenly reunites with all the friends he's made along the journey. They cheer him on and tell him to continue fighting, to find some way to break the chains of fate and stop Gaia once and for all. With his renewed strength, the spirits bring him to their realm and grant him the ultimate weapon to defeat Gaia. Justin, Rapp, and Liette rush to where Mullen and Fina plan to confront Gaia, battling Mullen one-on-one to convince him of Justin's newfound power and willingness to break the cycle of their world. Fina rejoins and they all head into Gaia's warped body for the final battle. Here we go, the moment we've been leading up to, the culmination of the story, the chance to shatter destiny and find a new path for humanity, to save everyone we love and forge a new path for... Why does this keep happening to me? Okay, remember how I said I didn't need to grind once while playing Grandia? Well, apparently they decided that wasn't a great quality, and the final boss should have the usual difficulty jump, and it's for a number of reasons besides just stats. See, Gaia, anyway, he has some pretty hard-hitting attacks that can strike the whole party, no surprise there, that's the baseline for a final JRPG boss. He also has a part of his body that, as far as I can tell, can't be damaged in any way, meaning you can't prevent him from having a turn with it, and it usually delivers a party-wide attack, meaning it knocks back everyone's turns while each of his segments gets clumped together, and it just snowballs into a never-ending wave of big attacks your healers aren't fast enough to prevent, which means inevitable death and grinding. Can't believe you did this, Grandia. We were so close. We were this close, and you dropped the ball. Or should I say, the Gaia. A bit of grinding later, we get through the first phase because, of course, it's multi-stage. The second one is something I really don't want to talk about. And the final one is just a pushover. With Ball defeated, the team breaks the Spirit Stone, severing the world's connection to the spirits, Gaia, and the looping tragedy they brought onto the world. With fate defied, the people of the world can now reconnect, forging a new age of peace and prosperity, like Angelo before them, but a future made by unity rather than supreme powers. Lean even comes back, so yay! 10 years into this new world, we're shown what's become of Parm. Sue's all grown up and heads to the dock to welcome back Justin and Fina, even meeting their 5 kids. Jeez, guys, you really got busy on the open road. The camera pulls back, showing the town, and the game's theme plays one last time, giving a final bookend to this lovely tale known as Grandia. This game is simply wonderful. It has basically everything I'm looking for in a retro RPG. The story is endearing, the characters are great, the presentation is so charming, the combat is solid, and it's just fun. When you take a step back and look at Grandia as a whole, it might not seem like anything fancy or groundbreaking, and I can just imagine it getting slagged off by some critics as not pushing the genre or the console enough to be worth your time. But that was kind of the point. This was an era where every game genre, not just JRPGs, were pushing the limits of what could be done with new technology, cramming in loads of FMV sequences, gigantic world, detailed character models, mini games, all of which could never be done before, and those games have their place in history. Sometimes though, what people need is the basics done well. Grandia is a game that has its main story and nothing else. No mini games aside from that one weird one on the boat, no overly complicated side quest, no backtracking through a massive world with very little direction, and no real drops in quality. The late Takeshi Miyagi and his team at Game Arts knew their audience could tell a good game that didn't need bells and whistles to seem bigger than it is. FMV sequences are cool, having tons of party members is neat, a massive world can be impressive, but very few games have gotten as joyful a reaction from me as when I saw Fina confess her feelings to Justin. And really that's what it's all about. By stripping the JRPG formula down to what's needed and polishing it to a mirror shine, Game Arts made something wonderful because it just does nearly everything right. It isn't perfect. The final boss difficulty spike is annoying. I'm still not huge on the magic system. The story structure feels kind of messy at times, and some of the areas are genuinely irritating to navigate since you don't have the option to avoid a load of battles. But in the grand scheme of things, what matters is whether or not I think this game is worth your time. It absolutely is. This game is amazing, and while I do have my minor issues with it, it's also a quintessential experience for fans of RPGs. And hey, with it being bundled alongside Grandia 2 on multiple platforms, it's pretty easy to access, which is great because I think one of the reasons Grandia works so well is because it's a story everyone wants deep down. A fantastical tale of a plucky underdog and his ragtag friends going on a globe-spanning journey to stop a bad guy in the name of love, friendship, and justice. And who doesn't want a good story like that somewhere in their heart of hearts? If you do, go play Grandia when you get the chance. I promise you, it's a journey worth taking. Hey there, thanks so much for watching. I'm sorry it took me so long to actually get this video out. I knew it would be kind of a big project at the outset. Sorry about that. I meant to have it out last year, but you know, I got it out now, so that's something. And if you watched all the way here and you're listening to this, just, you know, thank you. It means a lot that you got all the way through. That's really cool. And if you'd like to see more stuff about me talking for hopefully not as long about other stuff, you can hit the subscribe button and maybe ring that bell. It'd mean a lot. It's very late. I'm very tired. I'm going to bed. Good night.